Hello and welcome to today's show. As usual, we'll be doing it live. So I'm going to be talking really briefly here about impactful stories that convert. It's going to be very brief. I have a lot of things I need to do today, but I want to keep on the track of producing these and creating great content that hopefully I'll get my fancy lady to transcribe and turn into great content, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so for today's show of the email expert or the email marketing show, I was just talking with a client, and boy, did we ever have fun in that call. You know what? Even the client before that, we were talking about, with both of them, impactful stories that convert. And this is something that's been overcheesed and really overdone in the marketing world. So I'm going to put a fresh spin on this and an old spin on this and really stick to what works, what I've done, what I know, and what's really helped me grow my business in the last year to levels I never ever dreamed of. In fact, this is the highest grossing December I've ever had, and I think it's going to be even better in January. Let me tell you why and what's working and why I want to talk about impactful stories. Really brief, bottom line is that when you're sending emails out, everybody's looking for the obvious, the norm. We only really notice as human beings when we see something dramatically different. So you need to be dramatically different in your emails. And your emails, I mean, everybody's used to certain story formats, and everybody's used to certain marketing speak, teaching language, educational language, general announcement language. What you really need to do is transcend all that by writing something that you would write to somebody you know personally. In fact, even better, a phone call you would have, where you're going to tell somebody something. Now, I want to tell you a secret that I've learned. When I want to convince somebody of something, all I have to do, even, man, I almost wonder if I should tell this, but you know what? I love the idea that I'm being as authentic as I'm ever going to be in these videos. So even if I pass away, hopefully YouTube will keep these online helping people. So in the past, and I'm going to say like 10 years ago, even if I lied to somebody, if I do this formula, they'll believe me all over again. I wish that weren't true, but I've learned to use this stuff for ethical purposes, but it works, okay? The bottom line is you need to tell a story. In fact, what I might even do in this, if I can squeeze the time here before I rapidly dive into the things I've got to get done in the next couple hours, is actually tell you a real converting story. But anyway, so there's a story formula. Let's go to the historical part first. I think one of the first examples of a fictitious story, now I highly recommend real ones, but a fictitious story, a completely made up story that converted like wildfire. This sales letter was mailed for 25, 28 years. That advertised the Wall Street Journal, and you can find it on Google. Two young men, they were very much alike. I'm not going to read it to you. You can find it online, but I'm going to read a tiny chunk of it actually. Here's how it goes. It says, on a beautiful late spring afternoon, 25 years ago, two young men graduated from the same college. They were very much alike, these two young men. Both had been better than average students, both were personable, and both, as young college graduates were filled with ambitious dreams for the future. Recently, these two men returned to college for their 25th reunion. They were still very much alike. Both were happily married, both had 3 children, and both as it turned out, had gone to work for the same Midwestern manufacturing company after graduation, and were still there. But there was one difference. One of the men was the manager of a small department of the company, and the other was the president. Hold up a sec. Go back for a second. Your brain goes, wait a second. Same school, same backgrounds, same everything, right? What made the difference? Have you ever wondered, as I have, what makes the kind of difference in people's lives? Isn't it it isn't always a native intelligence or talent or dedication that one it isn't that one person wants success and the other doesn't. The difference is in what each person knows and how he or she makes use of that knowledge. That is why I'm writing to you, to people like you, about the Wall Street Journal. See, okay, so let's take this a step further, though. Okay, back to, remember I was saying, years and years I've used this formula that, you know, if I wanted to convince somebody of something, all I had to do was pull this out of my pocket. Let me tell you what that thing is. So the video I was going to do today was about how to warm up a cold list, or how to mail a dying, non-responsive list. Okay, here's what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to talk about the story thing, but maybe I'll tell a story about the responsive thing. Pretend you're somebody right now listening who maybe has an e-commerce site with 500,000 buyers, and you've never mailed them, or you haven't mailed them in a really long time, over a year, or somewhere in that window, maybe half a year or something. And you come to me and you say, well, what can you do for me? Now, a salesman, a traditional salesman, might say, well, the first thing we do is we're going to run that through a list scrubber, and we're going to scrape these type of contacts and those contacts. We'll remove the list poisons. We'll start off with a re-engagement campaign, and we need an A, B, and C, and here's an invoice, and when would you like to start? And that's not going to sell anything, because who cares? Here's what I would do if I wanted to sell this person something. What I would do is say, you know, I had a client exactly like you once. They had an app. They had 400,000 downloads of their app, and they'd never emailed any of the people who'd opted in. So what we did was, and we managed to actually get some really great results for them. So let me tell you about those results. We had so first of all, this guy had an app where people could basically get some self-help. And they would, let me explain how this worked. So basically, in order to get the free downloads for the self-help, they had to put their email address in, and then whichever self-help they picked, they would automatically get put into that segment of the list. But again, they were never mailed. And now, as you know, MailChimp, all the other places don't let you just automatically import a bunch of cold prospects into there. And if you did, you would automatically get kicked off if you got too high of a bounce, complaint, unsubscribe, whatever. Any of those would get you kicked off. So, you know, here we were with this guy who basically had an unmailable list of possible money, right? And that's what everybody's always excited about, is it could be money. And for this guy, when we were finished with him, it certainly was. So here's what we did with him. We built this custom email server in the Amazon cloud. This is all a true story, by the way. I said I'd give an example, but this is all true story. So then what we did was, I used my infamous, which you can find on my website, www.answerswanted.com. I used my famous, what's it called, I'm sorry subject line. And we sent an email to the first batch using the custom email server. And, you know, we got really high unsubscribe rates at first, anybody who just didn't want to be marketed to. But who cares? Because if it's on your own box, nobody cares about that. And in fact, the engagement score is really high based on that. So, because I don't think a lot of the mailing softwares out there are AOL, Yahoo, Gmail, etc. I don't think they can tell the link click was an unsubscribe button. It was just a link click, and open and a link click. So I think we got about a 33 to 35% open rate on this list. Anyway, skipping ahead, we did a follow-up survey, and we landed the survey on a thank you page to a opt-in software, and we made $6,000 worth of sales, pretty much within 48 hours after the warm-up phase. So we did a couple of week warm-up phase, and then we did this thing. So anyway, I guess the point I'm getting at, and I'm maybe not doing as great of a job, is that you can do this thing where you relate to the reader, establish that you know how to confidently solve or handle their biggest fear. You've been where they want to go, and if you can inject emotion, all the better. Like if you can, you know, say, well, actually, kind of like what I did, where I said, you know, we were worried about getting kicked off these other services. There were all the other kind of barriers that could happen if we got wrong, but you get the idea. Anyway, so the formula for impactful converting stories is relate to the reader, establish that you know how to solve or handle their biggest problem, communicate all the compelling benefits, and basically tell them how you got there and how to fix it. So anyways, I'm going to wrap this up for today. Hopefully this is still recording and you got something out of this. And yeah, but the bottom line is, if you can tell a personal, emotionally impactful story of an example of how this works, even if the story is not true, like the Wall Street Journal example, it definitely does increase conversions.